I went to high school in a small town in Oregon. On Friday and Saturday nights, everyone would cruise up and down Main Street or hang out at the park. My girlfriend Katie and I were sick of doing the same thing every weekend, so we were trying to think of something else to do. I said we should go to the schoolhouse because I knew she would get really scared and grab onto me. She kept saying no, but I finally convinced her. The schoolhouse was a fenced-off building outside of town that was supposedly haunted. The story is that a bunch of kids were murdered there by a crazy teacher with a machine gun. So if you go inside in the middle of the night and sit there for long enough, you will see the scene repeat itself. I knew this was bullshit because I had tried it with my buddies. I think it was a schoolhouse though, because there was a chalkboard on the wall. It was basically a big room with a small room at the back and an entryway at the front. We pulled up next to the fence and got out. I really wasn't worried about my car being seen because there was never anyone driving on this road, so the chances of a cop driving by was almost zero. I helped her jump the fence and then I did. We walked around the building because the entryway was boarded up, but the back way didn't even have a door. We went inside. I had a flashlight but was keeping it off to make it scarier. There was broken glass and trash crunching under our feet, and as we stopped in the middle of the classroom, I grabbed Katie's arm. I realized I heard breathing. I immediately turned the flashlight on and pointed it to the entryway. My heart stopped as I saw what was in there with us. A dirty man with long, greasy hair was on his hands and knees. He was low to the ground and staring up at us. His clothes were torn and disgusting. His eyes were wide open, as big as quarters. I could see them through the strands of hair that were hanging in front of them. And he was panting, like a dog that had just finished running on a hot day. We just stared at each other for probably 10 seconds. I was too terrified to move. Katie pulled me towards the door and I snapped out of it. We ran out and jumped the fence. I looked back as we got in the car. I didn't see him, and we got the hell out of there. I didn't call the cops, and I never went back there again. When I was around 10 years old, my grandparents got a full-size dummy. It had a solid torso and head, but the arms and legs were movable, like if you stuffed sweatpants with newspaper. He had real hair and a realistic face. I bet you could use him to drive in the carpool lane and nobody would know. They used to sit him in a chair and leave the TV on to make it seem like someone was home while they were away. The first time I saw it, it creeped the fuck out of me. I don't like things that aren't alive but look like they are, or look like they could come to life. I guess I've watched too many horror movies. Anyways, my grandparents always kept it in the basement, even though they really didn't use it anymore. Recently, they were out of town for a while, and I was stopping by to make sure everything was okay. Watering the plants, mowing the lawn. I usually hang out for a while, make some food, drink beers, and watch TV. They have a huge deep freezer in the basement with all kinds of good stuff, so I went down to get something awesome to eat. The basement isn't that big, but it's really full. Shelves with canned goods, boxes of shoes, tools, and racks of clothes. There are lanes that you have to walk because there is so much shit down there. So I went to the freezer. I looked behind me. The dummy is on a chair in the corner. Its legs are folded up underneath it, and the arms are hanging down both sides of the chair. Getting the willies, I shuddered and grabbed a blanket from a shelf. I threw it over him and got a frozen pizza. A couple days went by and I went back over to check on everything. After watering the plants, I went to grab something from the freezer again. I went down and was looking through it when I thought about the dummy. I looked back, and it wasn't there. The blanket was on the floor. Every hair on my body stood up. I was just standing there waiting, trying to listen for any movement. I knew that there was a logical reason for it, but the thought of seeing the dummy peek out around the clothes racks or standing somewhere watching me was horrifying. I closed the freezer and ran out. I kept looking over my shoulder until I got in my car and left. It turned out that my stepmom wanted to use it for something and had picked it up. Everyone thought it was so funny when I told them about it. I think watching horror movies all the time is messing with my head. My name is Mia, and when I was young, I used to go hiking and camping with my dad a lot. He was off work on the weekends, so we would spend time together. My mom was a drug addict and had split on us when I was just a baby. But I had a really good childhood and was fine being a daddy's girl. I always liked being out in the wilderness, and I still do. We would talk about school and tell jokes. You know, father-daughter bonding. One hike will always stand out in my mind, though. For a hike, we would usually leave before the sun came up and get home before it went down. He wanted to go to a place we hadn't gone before, so we headed out. We drove out of town and picked a place to park. We headed into the woods with some water and snacks for later. We had hiked for a couple hours and we came across an open tent. We looked around but didn't see anyone. My dad walked up to the tent and was looking inside when a man said,
"Anything good in there?"
I jumped and looked for where the voice came from. A man was in a tree a few feet next to us. As he climbed down, my dad pulled me behind him. The man got to the ground and started walking towards us. He said,
"Why the fuck are you snooping around in my shit?"
My dad said he wasn't. He was just looking to see if someone was in there. He looked crazy and I started to panic because I could tell that my dad was getting nervous. The man bent down into the tent, and as he did, I thought I heard something. I spot him. Another man in a different tree. I said, "Dad, another one." The second man started to climb down, and the guy reaching in the tent stood back up. He had a huge knife. My dad is an average-sized guy and mild-mannered, but people do crazy shit if they're scared enough. The man started to say something and my dad clocked him before he finished the first word. Knocked him on his ass. We turned and ran the way we came, dodging trees and bushes. We could hear them following behind us, hollering and threatening, but we kept at it, and eventually were starting to lose them. At some point they gave up, but we hurried all the way back to the truck just to be sure. Luckily, my dad is a badass and acted when he did, because if the second guy had gotten to the ground, I have no idea what would have happened, or if we would have been able to get away at all. In 1999, I had a Chevy S10 that was leaking oil like crazy. My uncle was trying to help me figure out if we could fix it. We couldn't see anything because oil was splattered all over. Plus, the whole engine was pretty dirty, so he told me to go to the car wash and spray it all. The car wash wasn't too far from his house, probably 2 miles. It wasn't a drive-through, it was only the stalls. I was getting quarters from the machine and I heard someone. I turned around and this middle-aged guy was walking towards me. He looked mad about something and was muttering to himself. As he got closer, he spoke louder. He wasn't saying words, though. It was gibberish with curse words mixed in. He was yelling at me. I could tell that he was a crazy person at this point, and that really scared me because a crazy person is completely unpredictable. Thinking back on it, it must have been that I was wearing a Slipknot shirt that had a scary bloody face on the back, because that's what he would have seen as I was getting quarters. Maybe he thought I was a demon or something. So while he's yelling at me, I'm just standing against the quarter machine trying not to look directly at him. I don't want to piss him off anymore. He gets done with his rant and just turns and walks away. I'm kind of in shock for a second and watch him walk. I get my quarters and I'm walking back to my truck asking myself, what the fuck was that all about? I get to my truck and look to see where the man is. He's running full speed towards me. He was about 20 feet from me. I jumped into my truck and locked the door. The man gets to my window and he's trying to open my door. His eyes are filled with rage. He starts hitting my window hard. I start my truck and put it in drive. As I'm about to punch it, a car driving past the car wash hits the brakes. An older man and woman jump out and rush towards the maniac. They escort him back to the car parked in the street. When they got him in the car, the old woman waved at me, as if to say I'm sorry. I didn't wave back. My only guess is that this psychopath escaped from the old people's house, and they were searching for him. I'm glad they found him when they did. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for checking out my first video. I'm gonna keep them coming. If you want me to tell your story, email me at the address in the description. And I really don't have like a slogan or anything. What do you think, Ripley? Be good to animals, even other people. See you. I went to high school in a small town in Oregon. I'm real glad that you decided to eat that fucking bone right now.